Ever since the death of former President Edgar Lungu, one question has refused to go away. Why hasn't the public seen his body? Across Zambia and beyond, rumors are spreading, suspicions are rising, and the demand for truth grows louder each day. Was this a matter of dignity, secrecy, or something far more serious? Stay with us, because what we've uncovered may change the way you look at Edgar Lungu's final days and the fight over his legacy. The death of former Zambian President Edgar Chagwa Lungu has left behind more questions than answers. As Zambia and South Africa clash over his burial, the public is asking, why was Lungu's body never displayed? In this in-depth documentary, InspirAfrica official reveals the timeline of Edgar Lungu's final days, why his family and South African courts blocked public viewing, the suspicions fueling rumors of secrecy, what this means for Zambia's politics, unity, and democracy. Watch until the end as we break down what really happened and why the truth has been hidden for so long. Subscribe now to InspirAfrica official for more exclusive political investigations and breaking stories from Zambia and across Africa. Hidden Truth. The mystery begins. Why Edgar Lungu's body was never shown publicly. The death of Edgar Lungu, Zambia's 6th president, on June 5, 2025, in a South African hospital sparked immediate controversy, largely due to the absence of public body viewing, which is customary for prominent African leaders, especially former heads of state. The hidden truth refers to the speculation and mistrust surrounding the circumstances of his death and the decision to restrict access to his remains. Several factors contributed to this mystery. Family's control over funeral arrangements. Lungu's family, led by his widow Esther Lungu and represented by spokesperson Makibi Zulu, insisted on a private funeral in South Africa, citing Lungu's explicit wishes that his political rival, President Hakainde Hichilema, should not be involved in his burial. This decision broke with Zambian tradition, where former presidents are typically given state funerals with public body viewings to allow citizens to pay their respects. The family's refusal to allow open access to the body fueled suspicions, as Zambians expected to see Lungu's remains to confirm his death, especially given his influential status. Political feud with Hichilema. The long-standing rivalry between Lungu and Hichilema, marked by Hichilema's imprisonment under Lungu's presidency and subsequent political harassment of Lungu after 2021, created a backdrop of distrust. The family believed that a state funeral in Zambia, presided over by Hichilema, would be a mockery and a public relations stunt by the government to sanitize its treatment of Lungu. This feud led the family to tightly control funeral arrangements, including barring body viewing to prevent any government involvement. Speculation of foul play or fakery. The lack of public body viewing gave rise to conspiracy theories, amplified by social media and Patriotic Front (PF) loyalists. Some speculated that Lungu might still be alive, using his death as a Plan B to evade legal scrutiny over corruption allegations against him and his family. Others suggested the body might not be Lungu's, pointing to reports that he was admitted to the hospital under a different name, possibly a Zimbabwean passport, raising questions about identity verification. These theories were fueled by the family's refusal to allow government or public access to the body, which they claimed was to honor Lungu's wishes but was perceived by critics as secretive. Cultural and legal context. In African traditions, public body viewing is a significant part of mourning, especially for leaders, to provide closure and transparency. The family's decision to forego this practice was seen as unusual and disrespectful to Zambian customs. Additionally, Zambian law is ambiguous on who controls a former president's funeral, but precedents such as the burial of Kenneth Kaunda suggest the state has authority over national figures. The family's insistence on privacy clashed with this expectation, deepening the mystery. The hidden truth remains elusive because the family's actions, while legally within their rights under South African law, where Esther Lungu, as the surviving spouse, could determine burial arrangements, were perceived as evasive in Zambia. The absence of photographic evidence, official government confirmation at the time of death, and restricted access to the body created a vacuum filled by speculation, which the government's later demands to verify the body only intensified. Lungu's death timeline. To understand the controversy, a clear timeline of events surrounding Lungu's death and the subsequent funeral dispute is essential. Below is a detailed chronology based on available information. Early 2025, Edgar Lungu, aged 68, traveled to South Africa for specialized medical treatment for an undisclosed illness. Reports indicated his condition was steady by May 2025, despite rumors of deteriorating health. Lungu had a history of medical issues, including achalasia, a rare esophageal disorder, treated in South Africa in 2015, and a hypoglycemic attack in 2021. June 5, 2025, Lungu died at 4 o'clock Greenwich Mean Time at Mediclinic Med Forum in Pretoria, South Africa, following cardiac complications during surgery. His daughter, Tassila Lungu, announced his death via a Facebook video, confirming he had been under medical supervision. The Patriotic Front (PF) issued a statement, and condolences from regional leaders like South Africa's Cyril Ramaphosa and Kenya's William Ruto followed. However, President Hichilema and Zambia's national broadcaster, ZNBC, remained silent for hours, raising suspicions among Lungu's supporters. June 6 to 11, 2025, the Zambian government declared 7 days of national mourning with flags at half-mast. Hichilema called for unity, but tensions emerged as the government announced plans for a state funeral, while the PF PF and Lungu's family insisted on controlling arrangements. A private memorial service was held in Pretoria's Sacred Heart Cathedral, attended by Esther Lungu and family, but no body viewing occurred, confusing mourners. June 13, 2025, Makibi Zulu revealed Lungu's explicit instruction that Hichilema should not be near his body, escalating the feud. The family initially agreed to a state funeral on June 22 in Lusaka, with Hichilema presiding, but accused the government of deviating from agreed terms, leading to a breakdown in negotiations. June 18 to 20, 2025, the family halted plans to repatriate Lungu's body to Zambia, announcing a private burial in South Africa to honor his wishes. Hichilema cancelled the 16-day national mourning, citing the family's refusal to cooperate. The decision to bury Lungu in South Africa was unprecedented, as all other Zambian presidents since independence in 1964 were buried at Embassy Park in Lusaka. June 25, 2025, on the day of the planned burial at Johannesburg's Cathedral of Christ the King, the Zambian government obtained a last-minute court order from the Pretoria High Court to halt the ceremony. Mourners, including Esther Lungu, attended a mass instead, learning of the delay only after the service. The court set deadlines for the government, July 4, and family, July 11, to file papers, with a full hearing scheduled for August 4, 2025. July 29 to 31, 2025, the Zambian government, through Attorney General Mulalo Kabesha, requested permission to inspect and authenticate Lungu's body at the Pretoria funeral parlor, citing public interest and conspiracy theories. The family resisted, arguing it was an insult to Lungu's dignity and a violation of a June 25 court order limiting body access to family members. Governance activist Wesley Mayanda urged the family to allow verification to dispel doubts, while PF loyalists accused the government of political theater. August 1, 2025. Present, the dispute remains unresolved, with Lungu's body still at a Pretoria funeral parlor. The family seeks costs for the cancelled June 25 burial, while the government pushes for repatriation and verification. Public speculation continues, with no consensus on when or where Lungu will be buried. This timeline highlights the rapid escalation from Lungu's death to a national and international controversy, driven by political rivalries, legal battles, and the family's secretive approach to the funeral. Why his body was never shown. The decision to withhold public viewing of Edgar Lungu's body is central to the controversy and stems from a combination of personal, political, and legal factors. Lungu's explicit wishes. The family, through Makibi Zulu, stated that Lungu left instructions that Hichilema should not attend his funeral or be near his body. To enforce this, the family opted for a private burial in South Africa with severe restrictions on cameras and body viewing and an invitation-only attendance. They argued that public viewing in Zambia would allow government interference, betraying Lungu's wishes. Fear of political exploitation. The family believed that a state funeral in Zambia would be co-opted by Hichilema's government for political gain. Makibi Zulu accused the government of pretending to care for Lungu in death, despite persecuting him in life through revoked benefits, police harassment, and corruption charges against Esther and other family members. By barring body viewing, the family aimed to prevent the government from using Lungu's death to bolster its image. Corruption allegations and legal risks. Esther Lungu and family members faced corruption charges, including Esther's case over stolen cars, which she denied. The family's decision to avoid Zambia may have been influenced by fears that returning the body could expose them to further legal scrutiny or arrests. Some speculated that restricting body access was a tactic to avoid scrutiny over Lungu's identity, given reports of his hospital admission under a false name. Cultural deviation and public backlash. In Zambia, a Christian nation, public body viewing is a cultural norm during mourning, especially for leaders. The family's refusal to allow this, even during church services in South Africa, was seen as abnormal. Critics argued that the family's secrecy suggested they were hiding something, such as the true cause of death or even the identity of the body. The absence of photographic evidence, despite widespread smartphone use, further fueled doubts. South African legal support. Under South African law, Esther Lungu, as the surviving spouse, had the right to determine burial arrangements. The family leveraged this to maintain control, supported by a June 25 court order restricting body access to family members. This legal backing allowed them to resist Zambian government demands for public viewing or verification. The combination of Lungu's wishes, political distrust, legal protections, and cultural deviation created a scenario where the family prioritized privacy over transparency, leading to widespread speculation and demands for proof of death. Esther Lungu and the family's position. Esther Lungu, as Edgar Lungu's widow, and the family, represented by lawyer Makibi Zulu, have been steadfast in their stance, prioritizing Lungu's wishes and their autonomy over Zambian government demands. Their position can be summarized as follows. Honoring Lungu's wishes. The family repeatedly emphasized that Lungu explicitly instructed that Hichilema should not be involved in his funeral. They argued that a state funeral in Zambia, presided over by Hichilema, would violate this wish and lack dignity, given the government's alleged mistreatment of Lungu, including revoking his retirement benefits and targeting his family with corruption charges. charges. Right to privacy. Esther Lungu, supported by South African law, asserted her authority as the surviving spouse to control funeral arrangements. The family planned a private burial in South Africa on June 25, 2025, with restricted attendance and no body viewing, to ensure a dignified and peaceful ceremony free from government interference. They thanked the South African government for respecting their decision. Accusations against the government. Mkibi Zulu accused the Zambian government of using Lungu's death for political gain, calling the state funeral a public relations stunt. The family claimed that Lungu's benefits were revoked, forcing him to seek medical treatment abroad, and that the government's actions contributed to his deteriorating health. They also argued that the government's last-minute court intervention on June 25 caused emotional and financial distress, justifying their demand for a cost order. Resistance to body verification. When the government requested to inspect Lungu's body in July 2025, the family resisted, citing a June 25 court order limiting access to family members. They viewed the request as an insult to Lungu's dignity and an overreach by a government that had no legal claim to his remains, especially since Lungu was a private citizen at the time of death due to revoked benefits. Public and political support. The family's position was backed by PF loyalists and some online influencers who saw the government's actions as persecution extending beyond Lungu's death. However, critics, including governance activists, argued that the family's secrecy and refusal to allow verification fueled conspiracy theories and delayed closure for Zambians. Esther Lungu's visible distress during the June 25 Mass in Johannesburg underscored the emotional toll of the dispute. The family's insistence on privacy, while legally defensible, clashed with Zambian expectations, deepening public mistrust and prolonging the controversy. South African court's role in the burial. The South African court, specifically the Pretoria High Court, played a pivotal role in the dispute over Edgar Lungu's burial, acting as the legal battleground for the Zambian government and Lungu's family. Its interventions shaped the ongoing standoff. June 25, 2025 court order. Hours before Lungu's planned burial in Johannesburg, the Zambian government, through Attorney General Mulalo Kabesha, filed an urgent application to halt the ceremony. The Pretoria High Court granted the order, preventing the burial pending a final decision on the body's repatriation to Zambia. The court noted that both parties agreed not to proceed with the burial until the case was resolved, setting deadlines for submissions: July 4th for the government, July 11th for the family, and a hearing on August 4th, 2025. This intervention disrupted the family's plans, leaving mourners at the Cathedral of Christ the King to attend a mass instead. Restriction on body access. The June 25th court order specified that only Esther Lungu, family members, and their spokesperson could inspect or allow others to view Lungu's body. This ruling bolstered the family's control, enabling them to resist subsequent government demands for verification. The family cited this order to argue that the government's July 29th request to inspect the body was unlawful and disrespectful. Legal arguments. The Zambian government argued that Lungu, as a former president, was national property and should be buried at Embassy Park in Lusaka, citing the precedent of Kenneth Kanda's burial. They claimed that state funerals with military honors were required by law and that personal wishes must yield to national interests. The family countered that Lungu was a private citizen at the time of death, as his benefits were revoked, and that Esther Lungu had the right under South African law to determine burial arrangements. They also sought costs for the cancelled June 25th burial, arguing that the government's intervention caused financial and emotional harm. Diplomatic implications. The court's involvement highlighted tensions between Zambia and South Africa. South African Foreign Minister Ronald Lamola visited Zambia on June 22nd to mediate, urging respect for the family's wishes while acknowledging Lungu's right to a state funeral. The family praised South Africa for its non-interference, while the Zambian government's actions were seen by some as challenging South African judicial sovereignty. Ongoing case. As of August 1, 2025, the court has not issued a final ruling, with the August 4th hearing expected to determine whether Lungu's body will be repatriated or buried in South Africa. The government's request to verify the body, if denied by the family, may lead to further court applications, prolonging the dispute. The Pretoria High Court's role has been to balance the family's legal rights with the Zambian government's national claims, but its interim orders have deepened the standoff, leaving Lungu's burial unresolved. Zambian public demands answers. The Zambian public's reaction to Lungu's death and the funeral dispute has been marked by grief, confusion, and growing demands for transparency. As a Christian nation with strong mourning traditions, Zambia expected a public process to honor its former president, but the family's secrecy and the government's legal battles have left many dissatisfied. Shock and grief. Lungu's death at 68 shocked Zambians, given his continued political influence despite being barred from the 2026 election. Radio stations played gospel music, and millions mourned a leader who, despite economic challenges, was praised for infrastructure projects like roads. The lack of a public funeral denied closure to many who wished to pay respects. Conspiracy theories. The absence of body viewing sparked widespread speculation, amplified by social media. Questions included disputed whether Lungu was truly dead, if he was murdered to conceal corruption, or if his death was faked to evade legal consequences. Reports of his hospital admission under a false name and the family's refusal to allow verification fueled these theories. Some even questioned why no photos of the body surfaced, given the prevalence of smartphones. Demand for verification. Governance activist Wesley Mayanda and others urged the family to allow the government to inspect Lungu's body to dispel doubts. Public sentiment, as reflected in online comments, was divided. Some supported the family's right to privacy, while others accused them of hiding the truth. The government's July 29 request to verify the body was seen by some as a reasonable step to restore public trust, but by others as disrespectful to the deceased. Cultural expectations violated. Zambians expected a state funeral with body viewing, as seen with previous presidents. The family's decision to hold private services in South Africa without the body present was perceived as a snub to national traditions. This fueled anger, with some calling for the family to face legal consequences or public accountability. Political polarization. The dispute deepened divisions between PF supporters, who viewed the government's actions as persecution, and UPND loyalists, who supported the state's right to control Lungu's burial. Public debates on platforms like Diamond TV highlighted the fracturing of political alliances, such as the Tons Alliance, as PF leaders clashed over leadership post-Lungu. The public's demand for answers reflects a broader desire for closure and transparency, but the ongoing legal and political battles have left many feeling that the truth about Lungu's death remains obscured. What this means for Zambia's politics. The controversy over Edgar Lungu's death and burial has significant implications for Zambia's political landscape, exacerbating existing tensions and shaping the lead-up to the 2026 elections. Deepened political divisions. The feud between Lungu's PF and Hichilema's UPND has intensified, with each side accusing the other of exploiting Lungu's death. PF loyalists see the government's actions as a continuation of political vendettas, while UPND supporters argue that the family's secrecy undermines national unity. This polarization could fuel unrest as elections approach. PF's leadership crisis. Lungu's death leaves the PF without its most influential figure, who remained a drawcard despite his 2021 election loss. Disputes within the Tons Alliance, as seen in public spats on Diamond TV, signal a leadership vacuum. Figures like Raphael Nakasinda and Miles Sampa face challenges in unifying the party, potentially weakening its electoral prospects. Hichilema's image. Hichilema's handling of the dispute has drawn criticism. His delayed response to Lungu's death and the government's aggressive legal pursuit of the body have been seen by some as vindictive, undermining his calls for unity. However, his supporters argue that he is upholding national protocol by seeking a state funeral. The outcome of the burial dispute could impact his popularity, especially if public mistrust persists. Corruption narrative. The dispute has reignited debates over corruption allegations against Lungu's family. Critics suggest that the family's secrecy may be linked to fears of legal repercussions in Zambia, while PF supporters frame these charges as politically motivated. The government's anti-corruption crusade targeting Lungu's allies could gain or lose traction depending on public perception of the burial saga. Legal precedent. The lack of clear Zambian laws on former presidents' funerals, as noted by constitutional lawyer John Chagwa, highlights a governance gap. The dispute may prompt legislative reforms to clarify state versus family rights in such cases, influencing how future leaders are mourned. Regional implications. The involvement of South Africa and diplomatic efforts by Ronald Lamola underscore the regional dimension. Zambia's relations with South Africa could be strained if the dispute is seen as challenging South African judicial authority. Additionally, Lungu's burial in South Africa, if finalized, could set a precedent for other African leaders seeking to avoid state control over their legacies. The burial controversy has exposed fault lines in Zambian politics, from party rivalries to governance gaps, with long-term effects on national cohesion and electoral dynamics. Conclusion. Will the truth ever come out? Whether the full truth about Edgar Lungu's death and the surrounding controversy will emerge remains uncertain, given the entrenched positions of the family, government, and public, as well as the legal and political complexities. Factors favoring transparency. The Zambian government's push to verify Lungu's body, backed by public demand and governance activists, could lead to clarity if the family complies or if the South African court mandates inspection. South African authorities have confirmed Lungu's death and issued official documents, suggesting that some level of verification has occurred, which could be disclosed if legal proceedings progress. The August 4, 2025 court hearing may resolve key questions about the body's identity and burial location. Obstacles to truth. The family's resistance, supported by South African law, and the June 25 court order limits access to the body, perpetuating speculation. Their distrust of the government, rooted in years of political animosity, makes compromise unlikely. Conspiracy theories, while unproven, thrive in the absence of photographic evidence or public viewing, and the government's delayed response at the time of death has eroded trust. Potential outcomes. If the court rules in favor of repatriation, a state funeral in Zambia could include public viewing, potentially dispelling doubts. However, if the family prevails, a private burial in South Africa may occur without further disclosure, leaving questions unanswered. The family's demand for costs and the government's verification request suggest that legal battles struggles will continue, delaying resolution. Long-term implications. The controversy underscores the need for Zambia to establish clear laws on former presidents' funerals to prevent future disputes. It also highlights the dangers of political vendettas extending beyond death, as seen in similar African cases like Angola's José Eduardo dos Santos. The truth may emerge through legal rulings or eventual family concessions, but deep-seated mistrust could keep the issue unresolved, fueling conspiracy theories for years. In conclusion, the truth about Edgar Lungu's death and why his body was never shown publicly is entangled in a web of political rivalry, legal disputes, and cultural expectations. While the South African court's ruling and public pressure may bring some clarity, the family's commitment to privacy and the government's aggressive stance suggest that full transparency is not guaranteed. Zambians may have to wait for legal or political developments to uncover the hidden truth if it ever fully comes to light.